Hello folks, this is November 6th, Friday Focus. I'm going to shift gears and talk about a new service that's a variation of an old service that we're going to be offering at Allure. So we started this practice really late 2003, but let's say 2004. And there was something we did called mesotherapy, where we'd inject stuff in the skin that caused the fat to melt. And here we are, 11, 12 years later, and there's a big change. So we're going to talk about that. In the late 90s, in Brazil, Dr. Patricia Ritz used, it was a combination medication. It's called phosphatidylcholine and Deoxycholate. So phosphatidylcholine is a type of almost like an oil, and Deoxycholate is like a bile salt. So we're just call it for short PCDC. So it's a combination of two compounds that were regularly available, and she treated the eye bags. So she'd inject this PCDC in little deposits of the little eye bags. And she wrote a paper on it that showed that with doing this injection a few times, 2 or 3 times, she could reduce fat in the eye bags. And we kind of collectively called that, again, mesotherapy, because, of course, the French picked it up because they're already doing injections, and it went down to Brazil where they were doing injections of something totally different, not really now in the skin, but in the fat, but that word mesotherapy kind of stuck. Then I came to the United States in 2004. I was one of the first doctors in the United States doing injections of this PCDC for fat. It was me and about 8 other guys. And some doctors started calling it something different, lipodissolve. Because we're no longer injecting into the skin, we're injecting the fat, causing the fat to melt. Well, that sounds interesting. And did it work? Yeah, it worked. We did thousands and thousands of patients. We had to do them 2 to 10 times to get the fat to reduce. There was another kind of mesotherapy that we were doing that was more of a traditional mesotherapy for cellulite. I'm not going to talk about that right now today. But this was specifically of this PCDC injected in the fat. It would cause the fat cells to die, we presumed, and the body would clear them away, the fat cells away, like a bruise. Okay, so the injection would occur, the fat cells would die, we presumed, and your body would clear it away, we presumed. Okay, so what happens when you presume? Well, you're guessing. So that brings in research. In the UCLA dermatology program, right about 2004, I believe, there's a Dr. Adam Rotunda who did a study injecting PCDC into pigs, figuring the pigs had a little fat. But he didn't really just inject PCDC, he did just DC, just PC, and combination of PCDC. And he found out that the active ingredient for what we called mesotherapy or lipodissolve was DC, Deoxycholate. You don't need the PC. So based on that research, I started injecting people just with DC because we could get it from compounding pharmacies. And I found that, yeah, it worked, but patients had a little bit more nodules, a little bit more soreness. So I stuck with the PCDC because this seems to kind of decrease the irritation. Well, fast forward 10 years, and there have been over 30 studies on the DC, the Deoxycholate, showing that it works. And in order to get rid of the nodules that I was experiencing, they would just do smaller little dots of DC. And that way the nodules are small and they go away. And they also studied what happens to the fat. Well, the fat cells die and your body clears them away like a bruise. Doesn't cause any harm to the liver or other organs. Doesn't cause any harm. It's perfectly safe. And then this year, 2015, it got FDA approval. They endorsed it for treating of submental or chin fat. And of course, the company knows that people will use it everywhere, but they just got to get an FDA approval for one area to get in the hands of doctors, and then we could try it in other spots. Of course, I already know it works everywhere. We've been using it for over 10 years, thousands of times. So I got FDA approval for DC. And they came up with a name for it because they didn't want to call it mesotherapy because that's already taken by the French, by the Trapister. They don't call it lipodissolve because that was kind of taken by the American doctors who've been doing it for 10 years. So they came up with a beautiful, elegant name of Kybella. that seems to me ridiculous. And they call the company name Kythera. So Kybella, I mean, it's a name that, you know, I mean, why not like fat melt stuff or something? But Kybella. And Allergan, who makes Botox and fillers, breast implants, they bought the company that sells Kybella for $1.8 billion. And based on the research that showed that the DC works, that's how big of a market they think it's going to be. Of course, they're going to charge us a lot of money for what we've been paying very little for. So Kybella is the new kid in town. Got FDA approved in this year, I think around April, and it's going to be ready for doctors to use in the next week or two. So we'll be using it here. Now, what's the difference between what we've been doing and like mesotherapy, or some people call it lipodissolve? We use the name mesotherapy because I was the first guy in the Midwest doing it, and that was a word that sort of people heard about from Europe. And then lipodissolve was sort of a word that came in after I was already doing the injections. We already had the mesotherapy kind of name going. Same thing, it's just a different name. So what's we were doing before and what's going to happen now? Really, it's just a matter of a more expensive drug to do the same effect because it's a name brand drug. Safety is probably the same. Some people will say, well, if it's a compounded medication, you can't be assured if the dosage is exactly right. No, that's probably true. So PCDC is now going to be DC. We still have the option to treat patients with different things for the cellulite, or even treat with the PCDC or the Kybella brand. Now, how does it work? Well, you take and maybe numb the skin up if you want to, maybe use a little ice, but you put little tiny needle pokes just underneath the skin into the fat, and you sort of can pinch it, and the fat that you can pinch is the fat that's in your skin. The fat that's kind of behind there is behind the muscle, so we know that we stay in the skin fat, safe. It's not hitting these critical structures. And you put little tiny injections in, and then they get red and kind of swollen and sore. And then in about 2 weeks, you can do it again, and then you can repeat it. Usually, you're going to do it between 2 and 5 or 6 sessions to reduce the neck. And we'll show you some pictures. The patients will have some soreness and some redness, but it's a very safe product. There's occasional irritation or something that looks like an allergic reaction, but it's really just local irritation. So that's going to be the next step, is moving on. And now we have all these different things for fat reduction. What would you pick? You've got the Cool Sculpting, the Vela Shape, Axillus, Vanquish. There's even liposonics and ultrasound that we don't really use anymore, too painful. There's a new laser on the market that melts fat. And then there's injections. Well, the injections were working great, and we were very successful with it. And then out came the Cool Sculpting, which was kind of sexy sounding because you're using cold energy, using a machine. It gave us more results in one session than mesotherapy did. So that still has a substantial role. But in areas where you can't fit the Cool Sculpting head on, this gives you an option. Might use it in an area where there's same irregular after liposuction. Again, it's only FDA approved for the neck. But as the doctor talking to my staff, we can talk about other areas. You really can use it anywhere that there's fat, subcutaneous fat, that means under the skin fat. Just there's a limitation how much volume you can use. So I'm not going to talk about pricing now. We'll discuss that in different meetings. This is something we've been doing for 10 years. We have the advantage of having done more of these than probably anybody in the world thus far. We were doing these 30 patients a day of the mesotherapy back in 2004 through about 2008. So we have a lot of experience with that. We can use the information we've garnered over the past several years to give our patients a good confidence what's going to happen. People see reductions in their fat. And of course, more and more people want to get fat reduction, but don't want surgery. And of course, like any other fat procedure we do here, this is not an alternative to lifestyle change. So somebody comes in that's obese, we got to get them to change the lifestyle first, and then when they have some flab left over, that's where this will work. Somebody is really heavy and they got a big thick neck, they should really work on getting the weight off, and then when there's a less thick neck, go ahead and do the procedure. We don't want to mislead people. So that's Friday Focus, a new product we're going to be offering at our office called Kybella. It's from the Botox people. And this will re-energize the mesotherapy part of our practice because it's going to be on TV and people are going to hear about it again because it kind of went out of fashion when all these other devices came on the market that really don't work necessarily as good, with the exception of Cool Sculpting and Vanquish. So thank you very much. Enjoy your weekend.